Right. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll be programming the sorting station in structured text, right? So just to give a quick background on the functioning of the sorting station, right? It's okay. So where are you? Right. So the sorting station helps us sort out different workpieces, right? So let's say I want to sort out the metal workpiece to go to the first slide, second one to go to the second one to go to the the red part to go to the second slide, and then the black one to go to the third slide, right? So we can use our sorting station and program it such that it's able to do that, right? So now we'll get started on using these instructions, right? So now they're saying when the part placement sensor and the start push button are activated, the conveyor belt will begin to move, right? So our part placement sensor, as you can see even from here, right? Part placement sensor is I0, right? So now we'll come here, right, and we'll say if P0, right, and I0. So your P0 is your start push button, right, as defined here in the variables, right, and then your I0 is your part placement sensor, right, according to the condition, right. So now they both have to be activated for the conveyor belt to move, right. So now, as again, you come here and then you say then, right, you want your conveyor belt. Your conveyor belt is Q0, right? So you say Q0 is equals to true, and then you end the if statement, right? And then now I want you to also, as I said, like from the last videos that we did in structured text, like adopt the habit of commenting on what you are doing. So now here you explain that you are using the start PB and the part placement sensor to activate the conveyor belt, right? So you can say activate, actuate, whatever term feels right with you, right? But as long as you don't complicate the commenting and you make it as direct as possible, right? So now, if you still remember from the last video of structured text, right? I told you that you can't put in a stop button. You can't put in a stop button here in this line, right? So now you have to create a line at the end, right, where you are putting the stop button. So you're gonna say if not, right? Then you want your P1. If not, no, you have to say if not P1, which is if not your stop button, then you want your Q0, right, to be equals to false, right? And then you end the if statement, right? So now the reason why you are saying if not instead of saying if P1, if you're saying if P1, since P1 is always on, it always deactivating Q0. So say if not, which means at that point where you press it, since it's normally closed, where you press it, like becomes open and then becomes an if not. That's when our Q0 will be false, right? So that's it. So now everything that you activate, whether it's a memory latch or even if it's a memory latch or even if it's an output, right? As long as you activated it at the top, right, you have to deactivate it using the stop button every time, right? So, but you can't deactivate inputs. Inputs, you have to, yes, you can't deactivate inputs using the stop push button, right? So now, again, let's look at what they're saying, right? So now, going back to our guide, right, they're saying when the part reaches the slide sense, right? When the part reaches the slide center, the conveyor belt will stop, right? So now, as our station is functioning, right, the part will come in and then go down like either of the 3 slides, right? So even if, like, regardless of the slides, the slide sensor always gets activated, right? And then we'll be using our slide sensor to tell our conveyor to stop, right? So now how we do that, right, is you come here, right, and then you leave a line for commenting, right? And then you say if if your slide sensor, right, your slide sensor according to this, it's I2, right? So if you say if I2, then you want your Q0 to be equals to false, right? And then you end that if statement, right? And then you also explain here, you are using the slide sensor to deactivate the conveyor, right? Yeah, something like that, right? So now let's move on to, so now let's say now if you run this, right? So if we run this, right? Say we put in a workpiece here, right? Part is moving, right? But now we won't see our conveyor belt stopping because the thing that we have to do, right? We have to make sure that the plunger can retract, right? So that's what we'll be doing next, right? So now for the plunger, they're saying the plunger is activated. When the plunger sensor is activated, the plunger will retract 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, allowing it to move through, right? So again, like the 2 seconds, like the delay, it signifies a delay, which signifies our use of a timer. It means we have to use a timer, right? So now we have to delay the plunger sensor by 2 seconds, right? And therefore delaying the plunger for 2 seconds as well, right? So now we come here, right? And then since we want to create a timer that's delaying the plunger sensor, our plunger sensor according to this, or even according to the label picture here on the document, right? Our I4, right? So now we come here and we say, if your I4 is on, right, then you want to create a memo, right, which is true, right? And then we end the if statement, right? And then we have to make sure we declare this variable, right? So now if you still remember, right, they just told us a timer, right? So we have to assume that the timer is latched, right? So this statement is it's trying to latch M0, right? So if it's latching M0, therefore our timer will be latched, right? So this statement serves to latch our timer, right? And then now we create our timer by saying timer underscore 0, right? And then we open and then we say in should be equals to that M0, right? And then comma, and then we clear our delay time for 2 seconds. So pt equals to t hashtag 2 seconds, right? And then we end the if statement, right? So we forget an equal sign here, right? And then now you take this timer, right, by creating another memo, right? That's gonna equate the timer, right? So we say timer is equals to timer underscore 0 dot q, right? So now declare these variables, right? So make sure a timer is declared as a tone variable, okay? This is very important, right? It's not an integer, it's a tone variable, right? And then you also declare your M1 as a Boolean variable, right? So now this is your timer, right? So now here, right? Now you comment, right? So now what we are doing here in the first line, right? You are creating so you are creating a latched variable of the plunger sensor, right? So sort of like you are trying to latch the timer, so you have to latch the input, right? And then here you comment again, you are saying you are using you are creating a timer to delay you're creating a timer to delay the plan to delay the activation of the plunger, right? So that's what you're doing. So now, again, so now you have to use this timer right now. So now you say, so now you use this. So now since you've created the M1, which is your complete timer, right, you have to use this timer, right? So you have to say if M1, right? Then that is when you want your plunger to retract. Your plunger, according to this again, right? It's gonna be your Q3, right? Then that is when you want Q3, right, to be equals to false, right? And then you end the if statement, right? And then here you comment by saying you are using the timer to activate, you're using the timer to activate, or not to, let's say, rather to make the plunger retract, right? So that's basically what you are doing, right? So now you run this code. Oh, sorry, before you run your code, right? If you still remember, I told you that everything that you turn on here, you have to turn it off, right? So now you have to also come here. So now since you have turned on Q3, you have to also turn Q3 off here, right? You have to make it to false, right? And then you've also turned on M0, and then you have to make it false, and also M1. You also have to make it false, right? So you are turning off all of the inputs, right? And then one thing you also have to do, since you just added a timer, right, you have to build, right? And then reselect your timer and build again, right? And then now you can log in, right? Okay. So now if we go back to our code, right, and then let's take out this workpiece, right? And then stop our process, put in another workpiece, and then we press play. So let's see what could be the problem. We press play, right? And then we press as you can see, it's moving. So now let's go and troubleshoot what the problem is, right? So now our plunger is not activating, right? Because right. So now let's try and troubleshoot what the problem is, right? Oh, we didn't make it go through. We're supposed to tell it to come on here. So we're supposed to say equals to true, right? And then we end the if statement, right? The if statement, right? And then now if we run this, now it's definitely gonna work. So that was just a minor mistake, right? So now again, we take out this workpiece, all right? And then now let's run it. Did I forget to press play again? Now we run it. So now it goes back, as you can see now, right? So what's the next instruction, right? So let's go back to our guide again. So now we've dealt with this, right? So now they are saying when the workpiece reaches the slide sensor, right, the plunger will revert back to its original position, right? So now they're also using the slide sensor here, right? This slide sensor here, which is I2, to make the plunger go back, right? So what we could do, right, so let's stop this, right? So now you could also create a line by saying if I2, right, then that is when you also want your Q3 to be equals to false, right? And then you end the if statement, right? You could do this, right? You can also do it here, right? It's correct, right? But for more efficiency, right? If you want more efficient, since you already typed in I2 here, you don't have to also come here and type it. You just copy, you can just come and put this here, right? As a control V, right? So now, take this out. So now also your I2 will also now be turning off two inputs, which is your Q3 and your Q0, right? So now your I2 will make both your plunger and your Q3 revert back to the original position, right? And then also what you have to do, right? You have to also reset the time, the timers, right? So now you also come here. Oh, before we do that, right? So now since we activated this through a timer, right, you also have to reset the timers at the same place we're resetting the actual output, right? So now you come here and say A M0. I'm just gonna do this. Control V. So now I'm just gonna make this into M0, right? So I have to both turn them off again here, alright? And also M1, right? So now I'm turning them off here, alright? So then now your comment will change, right? So now you are not now only using the slide sensor to activate the converter, right? You're also using it to also deactivate Q3, your Q3, which is your plunger, right? And the timers, right? The timer, yeah, you can say the timers is fine, right? So now you're using I2 for all of these done. So now you have to reevaluate your comment on what you're using it for, right? And then now, right, so now we move on, right? So okay, let's try to run this, right? So you can see its effect, right? So now let's put in a workpiece, right? Stop. You'll see as our path reaches the slide one sensor, the diverter reverts back, right? So now again, let's go back to our instructions again, right? So now we fulfilled this condition, right? And then now they are saying when the color and metal sensor is activated, right? When the color and metal sensor is activated, the diverter one will begin to move, right? So now you come here, right? So now we are dealing with diverter one, right? Stop the code. So now you look for, so the condition said when the color and metal sensor activated, right? So now you come here, right? And then let's leave some line for commenting, right? And then you say if, so your color or metal sensor, according to this, is your color metal sensor is I5, right? And your metal sensor is I6. So now you say if I5 and I6 are activated, right? Then you want to activate your diverter one. Your diverter one is your Q1, right? true, you make it true, right? And then you end the if statement, right? So now after you end the if statement, right, your diverter now will be activated like when it detects a metal part, right? So now you're saying you come here and then you also comment that you are using both the color or metal and the supposed to be and the metal sensor to activate diverter 1, right? And then now you run this. You log in with download, right? And then now you run this. So now, like, to test that code, we have to use the metal part, right? So now we put it in, and then now we go. Now you can see our first diverter is activated, right? So now let's see what else we have to do, right? So now we've done this, right? So now they are saying when the workpiece reaches the slide sensor, right, the diverter will revert back to original position, right? So as you can see, our slide sensor now, it's also turning off another input, right? So now you'll also be using it to turn off another input. So now, before we do that, right, I said, so now since we just activated Q1, right, we also have to turn off Q1 here. So you have to use the stop button to also turn off Q1, right? And then, like, going back to this statement now, right, we are using the slide sensor to make the diverter go back to original position, right? So now again, we need to write a new line of code. Since like this line is already here, we can just use it to also turn off Q1, right? So we just put Q1 here, right? And then now we should have fulfilled that line, right? So now if we run this, so now if we run this, put in the workpiece, right? So now you'll see as slide sensor gets activated, both the plunger and the diverter now, they revert now, right? So now let's see what's next, right? So they're saying when the color metal sensor is activated, diverter will be activated after 1 second through a non-latching timer, right? So non-latching timer, right? So that's a very important keyword again. So now here, if you look at this, right, this is where we create a latch, right? So if we are creating a non-latching time, right, we just leave line for comment. You just come here and you just say timer. So now since we have timer 0, right, we have to create now timer 1, right? And then use the input as. So now let's saying like the second workpiece, it only activates only the color metal sensor. Our color metal or metal sensor is I5, right? Make I5, right? And then you make your delay time for 1 second, right? Which is equals to T hashtag 1 second, right? So now this is how you create a non-latching timer, right? And then now you say M2 is equals to timer underscore 1 dot Q, right? And then now you declare these variables. All right, so you have to make sure that your timer you declare it as a tone variable, right? So now that should be fine. Then your M2 should be a Boolean variable or a bool variable, right? So yeah. So now here you are creating a non-latched timer for the red workpiece, right? So now you're going to use this to make a decision for the red workpiece, right? So now you have to now use this timer, right? So you leave line to comment, and then now saying if M2, right? If M2, then that's when you want your diverter 2 to be activated. Your diverter 2 is Q2, right? So now see, you say Q2 to be equals to true, right? Then you end the if statement, right? So now again, since you've just activated Q2, right, you have to turn it off here using the stop push button. So you have to come here and say Q2, right? And then also the timers, right? You also have to address them, right? So now your timers, which is you just created a timer, namely M2, right? So you have to also turn it off here, right? And then now you come here and you comment that you are using the non-latched timer to turn on to activate diverter 2, right? So that's what you are trying to do, right? So now with regards to diverter 2, right? With regards to diverter 2, now we have to run this, right? And then we'll see what happens, right? Say now, since we are sorting out the red workpiece, right, we'll be using the red workpiece. So we put it in here, and then now we run our code. So now the condition is that, let's say, okay, so now let's see, right? So since you've added in a timer, right, that one's supposed to, so we're supposed to build first, right? And then now let's log in properly and see what's going to happen. Now put in the red piece. So now, as you can see, your red workpiece is being sorted out, right? But now, if so now again, since like the reason why I just did this, right? So now if you still remember your output is also here, right? So now let's say, like, let's run this again, right? I want to show you something, right? So now, let's say now the metal part is coming through, right? This one, right? Let's reset everything, right? As you can see, now it's triggering both of the diverters, right? But now, since it's triggering both of the diverters, means there's a conflict in our code. So the conflict comes from the fact that we're also using, if you look at our code here, right, we're also using I5, right? I5 is being, so let's say a metal part is coming through, I5 is going to be triggered, and therefore it's also going to be triggered here, right? So we have to say, we have to state that like only one, if only I5 is activated. So if say if only I5 and not I6 here, right? So that like now it will only know if like only I5 is activated and not I6, right? That's when the second type should be activated, right? So now we run this. So let's build first since we've modified our time, right? Okay, no issues. Now we log in, and then we log in with download, right? And then now put in our metal workpiece. So okay, let me just press play. So now as you can see, now it's only activating one divert, all right? So now we have to, so now we have addressed this, right? So now the second condition now, they are saying when diverter will return to original position after the workpiece reaches the slide sensor, right? Similar, right? Since we already have I2 here, we don't have to create a line that's gonna tell it to, that's gonna tell our Q2 to be false. We can just put in our Q2 here, right? Let's say our Q2, now it's gonna be false, right? Even our M2, right? It's gonna be false, right? And then also make our M2, okay, we already done that, right? So now we run this. Do it before I run this. So now you log in, and then you log in with download, right? So now if you go back to this side, right, and then let's just clear everything up. So now let's start with the metal workpiece, right? If you can see, now we load it here. So now as you can see, it's being sorted out to the first slide, right? Every time, right? And then now the red workpiece, right? So now it's being sorted out to the second slide, right? Every time, right? And then now the black workpiece, right? So the black workpiece doesn't activate any sensors. That's why it can only just fall to the test slide, right? So as you can see. So now this is how you program your sorting station in structured text, right? So as like one thing that I want you to note before I wrap up, you can see that every input or output, let's say output, you can see that every output, it's always resetting back. Let me try and run this through one part so you can just see, right? That you can see everything resetting every time. You can see they return back to restant position. So like it's important for you to be able to stop or to be able to stop your output every time, right? You can't only reset them using the stop push button every time. So like as you can see now, they are all resetting, right? So yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you program your station in structured text. Thank you very much.